all of that process of reconciliation and checking happens because we don't trust each other. So it's not to say I don't trust, say, IBM per se, I do, but if I'm a company and I'm not IBM, my interests are different. They're misaligned. My ledger is not your ledger. I have to do this reconciliation. So we do it. We take it for granted. All of that accounting work going on all the time is a massive cost of trust. Think of how much time is spent doing that reconciliation process. And now just imagine if, in fact, this record-keeping function didn't reside centrally, but everybody got to share it. And in real time, we all knew at any given moment what the latest transaction from so-and-so was. It would just fundamentally change the rhythms of our economy. All these quarterly results that we hold our performance against, all the Wall Street analysts and portfolio managers who are benchmarked against that whole process of reconciliation. Our entire economy is structured around this idea of when we keep the accounts and when we check them and when we reconcile them. So I'm not going to tell you that the blockchain is going to suddenly make all of that go away, but it's just a really useful way to think about why it's valuable to imagine a decentralized ledger when this problem of trust gets dissipated and it gets shared amongst all of us. That's how we arrive at consensus. So this is the key point. How do we all agree on what we're all doing, right? So that we can come to agreements, resolve our trust problems, and move forward and build successful economies. This is what we're really talking about here. And it starts with Bitcoin because, as I said, money is a fundamental record-keeping system. That's all it is. But I like to tell people, Jason was talking about don't get too, this focus on the word cryptocurrency, and it just makes you react. I can't do that face, but I can, I can give you a sense. Because we're all focused on Bitcoin as a currency. And when I first started writing about it, I said, why? Why would I want this digital form of money? It's not backed by a government, doesn't have anything real. What's the use of this? But I think it's because I was focusing on the wrong thing. How do we capture that data and say it's unique? This is what's powerful about this. What's also interesting is that money becomes programmable. Right now, money is flat. It doesn't really have It doesn't really have anything other than this communicated value that says the money is moved from me to you, the value is moved. It can't do anything. In Bitcoin's case, or in any other digital currencies for that matter, because it's software, it can turn things on or off. So money now becomes its own community of power. And we can embed that into our transactions with each other, and it can make things happen. It can literally turn on a solar panel or turn it off. Or it can instruct that this right, this particular claim on a consignment of goods is now going to be transferred to this person. That's really powerful. Money, magical robot money. And smart contracts is another really interesting idea in all this that's emerged. Right? A smart contract is this notion that if you and I enter into an agreement of some sort, then how do we know that either one of us can't mess with the execution of the terms that we've agreed to? So what we typically do is have an escrow agent or a trustee to ensure that these transfers happen, or quite often, one of us actually runs the whole show. So when you have a relationship with your bank, you kind of have a smart contract because you can tell them every month, I'd like you to pay my credit card. But you're trusting them to do the execution of the terms that the two of you have agreed to. It's an asymmetric relationship. In this case, a smart contract says, all those computers that are running the blockchain, the network, and are tracking all the transactions, they can also track instructions and executions of agreements that have been made to a contractual terms. And neither you or I can change it. So if you think about things like supply chains, where there's a shipper and an importer or an exporter, and there has to be some sort of transfer of value, but you don't necessarily trust each other. Now you could, through a smart contract structure, have this transfer of these digital assets, all this value through programmable money running in this very smart way that neither of us can control. And it removes All of that friction, if we think about all those reconciliation, all the accountants doing all that work, every single step along a supply chain, there's some amount of compliance and checking and paperwork and so forth that has to happen because these mistrusting parties have to assure that nothing's going to go wrong. If we automate it in a structure that we all agree is working to everybody's interests because of what we've agreed to under this consensus structure, it can get really efficient. So we've now moved into all these areas that blockchain has become this buzzword, as you've heard, because people are realizing that we can apply this concept really broadly. There's a lot of it happening in capital markets. You might have heard about ICOs or ICOs, as some people call them. And they're kind of going out of vogue a little bit because there was a massive, big bubble-like performance last year. But now instead, people are thinking about tokenizing securities. So rather than these ICOs, which were tokens that were essentially used as something like Bitcoin, that is to say, an element of a distributed, decentralized system, and are therefore there to make the network work. What people are doing now is saying, okay, we can take an original security, it's a representation of value from a company that's issuing stock or bonds, or maybe accounts receivable, and because of the sort of structure of that token, with all this information that's embedded into it and the history that can be tracked, you can essentially move value really, really quickly and have all the things like the cap tables and all the background information resolved. So capital markets are going to become a lot more efficient. Clearinghouses and settlement agencies and custodial banks and all these intermediaries that have been there to resolve the different hops of trust can now essentially have this thing happen rather seamlessly.